Yes, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones. And AJ, you were still in Fenway Park when this drop is coming out, believe it or not. AJ has not left that seat since we did Three Things a couple of days ago. No, I'm just kidding on that one. We're obviously recording this one after we did Three Things, after Carolina's Fenway Bowl loss to UConn. Thankfully for Carolina fans, AJ, we're not even going to think about talking about that game. This is solely a podcast about what's next and looking ahead for Carolina football, because I think there's a lot of, well, I don't want to say think. I know there's a lot of excitement. I know there's a lot of optimism about what this program can potentially do under Bill Belichick, and that's what we want to talk about here. So we're going to leave, past is the past at this point, AJ. We're going to leave that UConn game behind us. It was a stinky game. That's my new terminology when I describe anything poor regarding Carolina football and basketball. We've used that word quite a lot with basketball this season as well, but we're going to use this podcast.
Trademark it.
Yeah, I really should.
Stinky, and you probably sell a ton of them to people in Raleigh.
Yeah, it's true. I really should, man. Maybe I'll think about that one and see if I could. I'm just gonna make some phone calls about making that happen. But yeah, Jay. I mean, it's a very interesting time for Carolina football. I'm 29 years old. I've been watching Carolina football for a long time and covering games for 6 years now. I've been going to Carolina football games for a long time because my dad's been a season ticket holder for a while, and I can honestly say that this is the most optimistic I've seen the Carolina fan base, particularly probably ever in my lifetime. I don't even want to use the word probably. I think for sure in my lifetime. There was a little bit, of belief when Matt came in. It was evident during his first season with the crowds and how bought in Carolina fans were, and it lingered for a little bit. And then again, we don't need to rehash it. It quickly faded away when things didn't go well for the Tar Heels. And now it's this point where there's this, Hall of Fame coach coming in, the greatest coach of all, arguably the greatest football coach of all time, coming into your program out of the blue. No one really sees it coming, and then it becomes this reality. So I think it's such a fascinating time for North Carolina football where, like you mentioned in our Three Things video, you mentioned on podcast before, the word from within the administration who makes the calls and hire Bill Belichick is they want to completely transform this culture. You had a great analogy in our Three Things of like an earthquake under KFC, not literally, but figuratively, where whatever has been developed there over the last few years is blown open, and let's start from scratch again and try to develop a culture of winning within Carolina football that just hasn't been around enough in the last 30 years. So what do you make of where we're at right now? Because like I said, it's such an interesting time from a media perspective, but I think from a Carolina fan perspective watching this, it's one of the most excited, if not the most excited I've seen a fan base in a very, very long time.
I would say at the outset of a regime, you might be right, but there was an awful lot of excitement when Butch Davis took the job.
That's true. That is a good point. Yeah.
I covered a game at Duke that day, and I had double duty that day. I had a game. Duke played like at noon, and Carolina had a night game against JMU in Butch's first game, and that was my article was the buzz in the stadium. And instead of going to the press box during the game, I covered the buzz. That was my angle going to that game. And I walked around the stadium and I watched it from different points of the stadium. And, it was a lot of excitement. I think they won 37-14. It just seemed like, okay, maybe North Carolina could finally do something. Because let's face it, Bill Belichick is their third. Let's finally do something higher this century. Mm-hmm. Because Butch Davis was Bill Belichick hire back then in terms of let's do something different. Yeah. They hired a guy that had a little bit of a reputation. They brought him in, and he didn't surprise anybody. They won, but not enough, and they got in trouble.
Yeah.
By bringing Mac back, that wasn't just an act of desperation. That was, okay, this guy's done it before. He wants to do it again. He wants to unfinished business. We kept talking about unfinished business. Tim Brewster was his tight end coach the first year and was with Mac in the 90s, and he kept saying, he'd pound his hand on the podium, unfinished business. Okay, there was a lot of excitement. Then that first game, they beat South Carolina. Then they beat Miami with the Daz Newsome catch in the end zone, which is one of the last I've ever heard Kane Stadium. They lose to Clemson when they decide to go for two. The optimism was extremely high in both those situations. Mm-hmm. And during a regime, it was very high when Mac was there toward the end because they were top 10. People in North Carolina were thinking, in the current landscape, we have a legit shot to contend for a national championship. But he left. So now it's, I think, the fourth period of incredible optimism and belief, or not belief, but thinking maybe Carolina can get there this time, since I started doing this for a living in November of 1996. Remember, my first game that I ever did, that I was ever credentialed to cover of anything, was that blown lead at UVA in 1996. And that was the biggest loss, still the biggest loss in Carolina football history. That and the one at home to Florida State the following year. But they were dominating that game. They should have won the UVA game. They had it in control and let it get away. So if they win that game, they go to the BCS, or I guess it was the Alliance that year, became the BCS the next year, and eventually gave us the CFP. So they've been here before. The question is, can Bill Belichick deliver, and then can it be sustained? Matt delivered early on. Okay, that first year they won. They beat Temple. They won a bowl game. They were 7-6. That was a great transitional year. They had this superstar true freshman quarterback putting up video game numbers. The next year they go to the Orange Bowl and they're in the lead in the fourth quarter, and they lose. Mm-hmm. And they were missing some key guys. This is before teams were playing bowl games with that 20 kids. The next year they start out number 10 in the country. Was a slide. It was a bad year. Program learning to grow and figure out how to deal with expectations. And then they had a really good year. They go to the ACC championship game. Then last year they're 6-0 at the 6-0 point when they're number 10 in the country. Since then, North Carolina is 8-11.
Yeah, it's not great.
8-11, and it's very not great. Lots of ugly stuff in there.
Stinky again.
No show against State last year. No show against West Virginia. No show against JMU. No show against Boston College. No show today. It's 5 no-shows in the last 19 games, and that doesn't include collapsing against Duke. That doesn't include a terrible performance against Charlotte, a terrible performance against NC Central. That doesn't include the NC State loss at home this year, losing to a team they should never have lost to. Mm-hmm. That kind of stuff. So, because it's not a good year for NC State, there just wasn't much there. So now they move forward into a new era, and I think what was Carolina football through Saturday is still there, because you still have a lot of players and people in the building who are part of it. So what Bill Belichick has to do is, as he puts his staff together, they have to install that culture that they want. And you can do it a little bit leading into practice, spring practice, but spring practice is where there's going to be a fork in the road for a lot of guys that plan on being back. And I would not be surprised to see more movement. So I think the roster will change more. They're going to still bring in more kids in the portal, and they're going to bring in some coaches. And coaches are going to look at their room and say, no, I don't want that. I don't want him. I need something else. So I think it's going to be very fluid through April when the portal closes, through early May. It's going to be a very fluid situation. And then they should be able to have a semblance of a culture established, and then it will only grow if there's success on the field. If there's not success on the field and Belichick struggles, then the culture will never fully take root.
Do you think the UConn game and how that game went down, again, go watch our 3 things if you haven't, because again, it was just a pitiful performance for North Carolina. Do you think that illustrates the task ahead for Bill Belichick? Because I know there's excitement. I know everybody's like, oh my God, we have this, I always call him new shiny toys, and he might be the shiniest one out there that's leading our program now, and he's going to come in and he's going to change everything. But when you look at what happened in that game, and really what happened this season, and how it just unraveled incredibly quickly and never ever got back on track, does that illustrate the job ahead, or do you kind of look at it and say, well, you got Freddie Kitchens at coach, he's not the head coach. You got Lonnie Galloway calling plays because Chip Lindsey left. You got opt-outs. You got Jacoby Criswell going down. You kind of look at it and say, well, I don't know how much you can take out of that, or do you think this is a monumental task ahead for Bill Belichick? Because I think you can look at it both ways. I think the good news for North Carolina, though, AJ, is with this new introduction of the portal that started a few years ago, I think you can transform a roster? I know you can transform a roster a lot quicker than you used to be able to. Can you do that culturally? I don't know what that looks like. That may take a little bit longer, but I think you can easily kind of look at it both ways and say some big job ahead for Bill Belichick, but with the current state of college football and college athletics, how it is, maybe it's a situation that you can turn around a lot quicker than you could have 5-6 years ago.
In 2021, they lost their last 3 games. In 2022, they lost their last 4 games. In 2023, was it 2021? 2023, they lost what, 3 of the last 4?
Yes.
They had Wofford in there. Was that last? Yeah, I'm trying to
believe so.
They lost their last 3 games. In the last 4 seasons, they've lost their last 3 games to FBS teams 3 times, and the last 4 another time. They have not beaten an FBS team after November 16th in any of the last 4 seasons. So what we saw today was, Saturday. I know we're doing this Saturday. But what we saw out there on Fenway, and the field in Fenway, was kind of the program's, I don't want to say DNA. I don't think that would be fair to Mac, but I'm going to go ahead and say DNA for the sake of discussion here.
Mm-hmm. I know what you mean.
That's what they were. I mean, Mac loves to say, hey, facts. Well, okay, the facts are they closed all these seasons poorly.
Mm-hmm.
So even as bad as the 2021 year started out, they got it going for a while and then closed poorly. So they had the Wofford game there when I was at Mohegan Sun. The basketball team played Purdue and Tennessee up there. So that was in November. Remember, that was Drake starting the second half and Jacoby starting the first half that game. But they started out well, other than the Virginia Tech game in 2021, but they were really good defensively. They were really good defensively in all of their openers against power conference teams. Their first game. And then the defense would fall off the table. You and I did something pod about that after the Minnesota game. We talked about it on a football show about, hey, wait a second, don't say this is who the defense is, because remember last year what they did to South Carolina, et cetera, et cetera. And it wasn't sustained. Culture sustains things. Culture gives you such a solid platform, and there's a fortification to the I want to say nuances, intricacies, because people will think I'm reading too much into it, but I'm not, because there's so many things that go into, particles that go into having the right foundation to be able to sustain difficult challenges. And this program hasn't been real good. Now, they did it for a while. I thought Mac and the staff after JMU did an amazing job getting them ready for Duke. And then they blow that, and they do an amazing job the next week for Pitt. And then they do an amazing job for Georgia Tech, and then they win 3 in a row. So I think they kept these kids, but the underlying, fiber that was in their bloodstream from a football standpoint wasn't what a lot of people in power around UNC wanted anymore, which is why a change had to be made, and which is why they were adamant about the change, and which is why the Bill Belichick aspect of thing. Look, they were looking at a guy like Jeff. Jeff Monken would have gotten the job. It wasn't Tommy Rees. All the people reporting the Tommy Rees thing are dead wrong. Jeff Monken would have been the head coach. He's a coach at Army. If it wasn't going to be Belichick. And what comes off the top of your mind when you think of Jeff Monken and Army? Physicality, toughness, discipline. Dot I's, cross T's. That's what they want. Matt Campbell, in spite of their performance against Arizona State, his program's been known for some of those things. You have to be tough to win at Iowa State because you're playing with 3 stars and no stars. So that's what they wanted. It's just that the Belichick thing, which they knew about in November, and some people knew back in the summer when I've said before that he first told someone in the BOT in last July at a wedding that he wanted this job if it came open. When his interview started happening and people saw the Zoom, and then of course Bubba and Chancellor Roberts went up to New York City, they realized that they had a perfect opportunity to get the ultimate football culture guy to come in and create something that even if he doesn't win 10 games, it's going to hand it off to somebody that will have a lot of that work already done. A lot of that concrete's been poured, just like Mac did with where things are now. Belichick coming in now doesn't have to pick up the phone and ask some guy, hey, help me build a new locker room. Help me do this to the football center. Mac was persistent and consistent with working to get the finances for football fixed. And he got a lot more for himself than what Larry Fedora got. When I say himself, his program. That's the launching point for the new regime. And the new regime's getting a lot more. So Mac, historically, when you look back, is going to serve as such an important bridge to what could be. We don't know what's going to be, but if they end up being very, very successful, and this truly does change North Carolina football, I think we're going to have to go back and look at Mac as a very important bridge to that, because of a lot of the things that Belichick or would have been Monken or whoever else wouldn't have to worry about. Mm-hmm. So moving forward, I think the cord can be cut, should be cut, and has been cut, and was probably the best type of result to happen because it reinforced everything that's needed. Mm-hmm. And they got a guy in there who is determined to lay out, to inject everything that's needed to every aspect of the program, from the quarterback right on down to the receptionists and the guys that cook the food and the people who do the work on the field and everything else. It's going to be a program-wide culture. It's the building. Everything inside the KFC, they want the culture to change.
Yeah, it'll, like we've talked about here, it's a big task ahead to do so because of what we've seen over the last few seasons. Like you mentioned, not closing seasons well, not being able, losing games like JMU, like they've done this year. You had an incredible stat about how Carolina has fared in Boston this year, just getting 2 no-shows essentially in Boston. So there's so many
no-shows.
Yeah,
the only guy in North Carolina who likes Boston, who likes this area, is Chris Culliver.
Yes.
And by the way, another example. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
We've done this in the other one. They scored 7 non-offensive touchdowns this year. The Tar Heels did. That's supposed to springboard you to wins. They're 2-5 in those games.
Yeah, and again, that just illustrates the task ahead for the new regime, and it will not be easy. I don't think it's going to be. I personally don't believe it's going to be something that you just snap your fingers next year and Carolina wins 10 games. Could it happen? Sure. I think it is easier to do so now with the portal and the ability to go in and get guys and also shift guys out quickly who you don't think are a fit. But I think it just, when you look at what Carolina football has been defensively, like we've talked about nonstop for the last 5 or 6 years since I joined Tar Heel Illustrated, what Carolina finds itself in offensively now of like, well, we got to go get a quarterback. We got Bryce Baker. We got some nice parts on offense that we like. You mentioned a guy like Chris Culliver, but this is a team that I think there will be some shades of, you will recognize a lot of things next year from what this team was last year, but I also think there's going to be a lot of new parts that maybe need time to gel and come in and get used to playing with each other and coaching. And I think there's just so many moving parts when you bring a new regime in, especially with the program where it is now, that I don't think Carolina personally is going to have instant success. But I think when you hire someone like Bill Belichick, you put yourself in a position to have success quicker than you would with maybe a guy like Jeff Monken or a Matt Campbell. So I think people should be excited. I'm not sitting here trying to say that, but I think for me, maybe I have a little bit more of I don't want to use the word realistic, but maybe pessimistic outlook on it, because I think a lot of people just say Bill Belichick success quickly. And I personally don't think it's that simple when you look at just the history of this program and the history of Carolina football over the last, like I've mentioned countless times, 30 years or so.
Yeah, I'm not even ready to even go there because we don't even know who the quarterback's going to be.
Yeah, there's so many new parts that still have to be ironed out. Absolutely.
I don't think it's going to be Ryan Brown.
No, I don't.
And I don't think anybody in the KFC thinks it's going to be Ryan Brown right now. At least I don't believe so.
No.
They went hard after Mateer, who ended up in Oklahoma, and they were prepared to pay quite a bit. They didn't get him. So there are other guys that could still end up being out there that they might like a lot. And they might like more than Ryan Brown. There are some people who've been really building up Ryan Brown, but I don't take a lot of stock into what some of them say, just because they've either been proven to be wrong a lot before, or I think sometimes people just want to get excited about the new toy, even if it's not a great toy.
And there's no proof with that.
Yeah, I think it's the Belichick thing. People are saying, well, if Belichick likes him, that's good enough for me. And I get that. And I'm not going to say that that's entirely wrong. However, Belichick needed a quarterback room. So right now, all you have is Ryan Brown, who started twice because the guy in front of him got injured. And you've got Jacoby Criswell. We kind of know what Jacoby is. And you got Bryce Baker, be a true freshman. I don't think Bill Belichick came out of retirement or not retirement, but I don't think he took this job to play a true freshman.
No.
So I don't think he took this job to play the backup at Purdue. I don't think he took this job because he can tap something in Jacoby Criswell that no one else can. I think that there's a bigger vision here. And I don't think that, I said it earlier, they're going to continue putting together this roster. And I want to see what it looks like in May and June. And I want to see how some of the kids respond and react to what they go through with the January workouts, with the February workouts, and then spring practice. So I'm a long way away from saying what I think this team can do. I will say this, and I'll ask you a question, and I'll ask people that are watching a question as well. Let's say what you saw this year at North Carolina, if Bill Belichick is able to take that and make UNC 15% better in 2025 than it was in 2024, if it's 15% better, what games do they probably win? They probably win Duke. They close it out. All right, so that's 7-5, and that's 4-4 in the ACC. Georgia Tech, they don't give up that late to me. They were right there going into overtime. I'd say you got to figure they find a way to make the plays to win that game. 8-4, 5-3. Is it NC State at home? Is it the Pitt game? Is there another one there?
Even if it's just one of those, I mean, you're talking about
just 9-3. You're talking 9-3 and 5-3.
Yeah. It's a good point.
Yeah. So, and JMU doesn't happen. And then they're not in this game. They're playing a more meaningful game, and maybe they're a little bit more jazzed up than playing on a baseball field, which is a lot of these kids don't follow baseball. They probably came here and said, this isn't very big. This is kind of weird looking. They don't understand the historical importance of it.
Kind of cold here.
The relevance of it. They don't understand that. My God, Ted Williams played here.
Yeah.
They're happening again. Goosebumps. Yeah. I told you my first full book I ever read in my life was My Turn at Bat by Ted Williams. Hell, I may go read it again. So I used to stare at his stats, and he's just a great player. I wasn't a Red Sox guy, but my point is, a lot of these kids may not have understood the importance of that and really where they were. So if it's 15% in 2025, and then it's another 15% in 2026 would lead you to believe they're going to play for the ACC championship if he's able to do that. But I don't know if he can. I don't know how much he's going to like doing this. I don't know if May rolls around and he's sick and tired of taking pictures and pointing at 16-year-olds. We don't know that. We're just going to watch this thing play out. I think this is going to be maybe the most fascinating experience of my career.
Yeah.
The COVID era was fascinating in an unappealing way. This, I think, will be fascinating in an appealing way because if at the very least I'm going to cover perhaps the greatest football coach to ever walk the face of the earth. And we're going to I'm going to cover him. We're going to cover him in his first foray into college football, something that could completely change North Carolina football moving forward. The sleeping giant that Bobby Bowden always talked about might finally wake up, and we might be here at the beginning of this massive transformation. That's exciting from a journalistic standpoint, and I know it's exciting from a fan standpoint, going back to what you said earlier about the optimism. I think optimism of winning a national championship or being a club that you can see playing in there, in something like that, is high, that the potential is there because the money's there. Now, there are a few other things that need Belichick going to get a lot of guys in the school that maybe didn't get in before. I know for a fact that Mac had some kids with 2.9 GPAs that the kids that were told you're enrolling, you've been accepted, and the school comes back at the last minute and says, we can't take this kid. And they had to go to battle. People knew the battles Mac had to fight behind the scenes in some of those areas. They would be stunned. Is Belichick going to be able to fight the 2.9 GPA battle? So there are a lot of things. It's not just he was a great coach and look what he did with Julian Edelman. There's a lot of other things here, and that's why the next 6 months are so crucial, because he's going to deal with a lot more different stuff now than he will once they start gearing toward fall camp. Once fall camp starts and it's football, he's going to be Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
But it's the stuff between now and then, I think that's going to be the greatest challenge, among the greatest challenges he's ever had in his career, and maybe the biggest. Who knows?
Yeah, I think it's a monumental challenge for a number of reasons, and I've said it again. I'll say it one last time. I think the good news for a guy like Bill Belichick and for Carolina fans is, with the portal being how it is now, I think you can change and transform a roster and a culture a lot quicker than you were able to 5 or 6 years ago. So I do think that is a reason why I think success could potentially come a little bit quicker. But like you said, there's unknowns. Again, we don't even know who the staff is going to be right now. There could be a couple hires on the staff by the time this drop comes out on Monday or Tuesday. But at the end of the day, we don't know what that looks like. We don't know the type of players Carolina is going to get in. We don't know who's going to start at quarterback. All these things kind of have to continue to develop throughout the offseason before we can come on here and have a genuine conversation about, okay, what can this team potentially do under Bill Belichick in year one? And I've said this to you off camera. I've said it on camera, AJ. I love what's coming out of Carolina in the administration right now. They are walking the walk, man. But, keyword but, you got to talk the talk too. And every indication shows that they will. But like you mentioned, with some of the battles Mac had to fight behind the scenes, with the money that's being promised, with the amount of money you have to spend to get these big-time athletes and players in now, you got to talk the talk too. And I'm not saying Carolina won't, but we just haven't seen it yet because it hasn't happened yet. So these are all things that a lot of people, I think, look at Bill Belichick and say guaranteed success. He's the guy that's going to do it. But I also think there's a lot of Carolina fans out there that are like, okay, this is awesome. This could really work. But we got to let things play out and see how it happens because, like I said, heck, we don't even know who the staff's going to be yet. So let's see how this offseason progresses. But again, a lot of reasons to be optimistic about what Carolina can be and potentially, should be under a guy like Bill Belichick, but still a lot of unknowns that we just got to wait and see play out. So it's going to be fascinating to cover, man, for a ton of different reasons.
His hires. I mean, what's next? Let's just see who he hires. Let's see how many pro guys he hires. Let's see how many guys with both pro major college experience. Let's see how many college-only guys he hires. Mm-hmm. We'll start to, and there's going to be more portal kids to commit. They can start visit. The portal closed Saturday. The kids can still visit. The kids can still choose new schools. They can start visiting again. I think the dead period ends January 1st. They can start on the 2nd. They've already got a couple of kids scheduled to come in. The roster is going to continue changing. There are a lot of spots. Remember, Carolina can go to 105 scholarships next year, so some of those determinations will be made. I know that in the SEC, I think they're all staying at 85.
Interesting.
I think 85 works. Coaches complain for years, 85 is not enough. 85 is plenty.
105 is a lot.
Especially now in the transfer portal era, because look, a lot of kids are going to play. They're going to move because they're not playing. So you don't want to bring a kid in, use a roster spot, a scholarship, use some of that precious money for a kid who's fourth team for 2 years, but eventually will get his turn. This isn't Nebraska in the 1970s and 80s where they would give out 140 scholarships and you'd be grateful as all get out to get on the field as a senior. Mm-hmm. It's not that at all. It's a completely different world now. So we'll find out a lot of stuff. And hopefully we'll get him to talk to at some point soon, and he'll answer the questions so we can learn more. He's got an obligation. I will say this also about Mac. Mac told everybody what was going on.
Yeah.
And if he didn't tell you in a press conference, some of us would hear it otherwise. Yeah. This is very, very good. And making sure Carolina fans knew a lot about their team. It was very important to him. I don't know if Bill will be that way, but it's very helpful to the program that fans know a lot of stuff about what's going on because they pay for it. It's their program. I was talking to an Uber driver going over to Fenway on Saturday before the game, and we were talking about the difference between the pro fan and the college fan. The pro fan supports the franchise by buying tickets and gear. You don't have Jerry Jones calling up Cowboy fans asking them for money. It's supposed to be his money, right? George Steinbrenner back in the day didn't call up Yankee fans and ask for money so they could sign Reggie Jackson. It didn't work that way. So college is different. And Belichick needs to understand you got to give more. You got to be a little more personable. You've got to satisfy that thirst because there's a drug element, get what I'm saying here, to the college sports fan that we experience because the passionate people who are so generous and love Carolina so much that they are part of our site. They're part of our community. They pay money. They want to know more than just the score and the yards and the 3-pointers. And that's our job to give them a lot of that and also give them unmatched perspective, which we do. And history has proven us out in that regard. They want more, and coaches, I think, are smart to understand, especially a football coach in North Carolina. There's so many moving parts there.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I think there's going to be a lot of really interesting things about what happens from the hires to the personnel. Who's the quarterback? Is Carolina's quarterback next season still playing? Does he have a really big game coming up that matters, in which nobody of note is opted out of? Because who would opt out if you're in the playoffs? We don't know. And it's going to be really neat to see how this shapes out.
Yeah, man, it is. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. And yeah, we'll reserve judgment on, like I said, I've said this a few times, and I'll say it one last time before we head on here. Bill Belichick makes a ton of sense on paper. Could really work, could not really work. If he comes in and wins games, AJ, it's going to be a damn good hire. If he comes in and doesn't, it's going to be a bad one. So we'll see what happens, man. It's getting dark over there, AJ.
Yeah,
really,
it's dark at 4:15 here.
No, man, that's
because they sit way out in this jet way out in the ocean.
Yeah, and it's cloudy and overcast there. I mean, it's noticeably brighter where I'm at than it is where you're at right now.
Because they're further east. So
yeah. Well, cold out there.
If you were to think of where Boston is and then go straight up, it's not that far. You go east, you're in Newfoundland. Newfoundland's at a different time.
It's a good point.
So it goes like this. So Raleigh is much further west.
Yeah.
Than Boston is. It's not just a straight line on the coast.
Yeah. Sidebar real quick. We're going to head out. What was it, like 40 degrees there? It wasn't too cold, was it?
It ended up being about 40, 42. It was a lot like it was Chestnut Hill.
It was hot for Boston right there.
It was like at Chestnut Hill, and the Tar Heels performed the exact same way they did in Chestnut Hill.
Yeah, man, stay away from Boston. Whatever you do, Carolina, just never playing Boston again unless you absolutely have to. So we'll know if the culture's changed, if Carolina beats Boston College again in BC whenever that happens, or they go to some bowl game in the Northeast.
By the way, the great Jeremiah Holloway was quick to point out that North Carolina athletics are 0-3 the last 3 times Drake May has been in the same state when they were playing, because basketball lost to Alabama, football lost to JMU. And I said, wait a minute. Didn't they lose 4 out of 6 last year to close the season? So you would think they've lost 7 out of 9. Whatever it is when Drake's in the same state. So
yeah, Drake's got the same
The Patriots were playing today. Saturday. You're listening to this not on Saturday, but I have no idea what happened. Kevin Roy was panicked in a group text saying that
he did get hurt, but he came back. He got hit helmet to helmet. It looked like not a great hit, but he did come back in the game. Last time I looked, it was 17-7 maybe.
I didn't even know who they were playing. I didn't even know they were playing.
Chargers. So tough
team. I wonder there were Chargers people on my plane.
Playing the kind of funny enough, playing Herbert, who a lot of guys have compared me to.
If you're a Chargers fan and they moved to LA, I was a huge Rams fan. I mean, I cried when the Rams lost back in the day. If Lawrence McCutcheon didn't run for 100 yards, I cried. And then they moved to St. Louis, and I was like, adios, guys. I have no allegiance to them anymore. I have no allegiance to any NFL team.
Yeah. 40-7 loss for the Patriots today. So not a great day for Drake May and company today, but not a great day for Carolina football in any way, shape, or form today. But AJ, like this podcast showed, the future might be a lot brighter than it is in Boston right now, because it looks very, very gloomy behind you. Kind of an appropriate backdrop for what's been a gloomy day for Carolina fans all the way around. But we'll go ahead and get out of here.
The weather here is like Jack the Ripper weather.
Yeah, it's not. It just doesn't look like you want to be there at all.
I was on the elevator with Bubba Cunningham coming up this morning. It's like 8:20, 8:30. And we were talking about the weather or something like that. Bubba's like, I've never seen it again. We have the lights on at 9 a.m.
He should be used to it, though. I mean, he was at Notre Dame for a little bit. I mean, he knows crap weather. He's got to know crap weather.
Yeah, but
a little different, but still. He's seen some bad weather where he's from.
That's where I'm going to be next Saturday.
Oh God, yeah, you are.
I got to go to Louisville. I got to go to Louisville. I'm flying out Tuesday morning, and then I'm staying out that way, renting a car, driving to beautiful South Bend.
I bet you can't wait, man.
Beautiful South Bend, and then come back that Sunday. So it's this next week.
Yeah, I know there's no other. I know there's
I
no
love
other place
Louisville.
you'd rather be.
I'll be walking the streets of Louisville on New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Just
I know there's.
I'm not gonna misbehave. I'm not doing anything like that. I love Louisville. I love downtown Louisville. It's a fun place to walk.
Looks awesome, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know there's no place you'd rather be than Boston, and then Louisville, and then South Bend.
I was in New York City last weekend waiting for an Uber when it was 19 degrees and it felt like it was 8.
Well, AJ's going to have a ton of fun traveling around the northern part of the country. Yeah, man, you look layered up right now. You're prepared today, man. You're prepared today. Yeah, man.
My dad will be very proud of me, and he'll tell me, your mother in heaven's very proud of you.
Hey, man, I'm proud of you too, AJ. Look, I do like the pullover, by the way. It looks nice. Looks nice and cozy over there. So
I am a walking fashion statement.
Yeah, man, you are, man. You're really strutting your stuff in beautiful Boston, Massachusetts. But yeah, man, y'all pray for AJ because I know there's no place
they're
you'd rather
kicking us
be.
out of here. Actually, swear to you, they're kicking us out of like 30 minutes. Yeah.
Oh man, that ain't right. So you got to go back to the hotel and work, I guess. Is that your plan?
Yeah, the hotel's not far.
Okay, well that'll be
just on the other side of the harbor.
Yeah, well, AJ will be back tomorrow night because people forgot there's a basketball game at 8:00. Why Carolina's playing Campbell at 8:00 on a Sunday?
On a Sunday night.
Yeah,
it'll be the smallest December crowd I have ever seen in Chapel Hill. Guaranteed.
Unbelievable.
And I'm saying this beforehand, so when you're watching this, you already know, so you'll know if I'm right or wrong.
Yeah, we'll see. TBD.
But Chelsea will be doing 3 things with it. Well, this is the next day, so
yeah, love that.
Chelsea did do 3 things, unless she had something else come up.
Yeah, glad to hear that, man. Getting Chelsea back in the mix. She'll do a fantastic job. Make sure you guys I would say make sure you guys go watch that 3 things if you haven't already, because it'll already be out by the time this podcast comes out. And go watch the 3 things from the UConn game if you really want to sit through that. And if you haven't seen it by now, probably by now, you might as well just leave that alone. You probably don't want to relive that game. But again, guys, we try to come on here and talk a little bit, look a little bit ahead. Still so many things to be ironed out and determined and figure out. But yeah, I think it's safe to say that things are the future is brighter than Chapel Hill than maybe it was, when the game ended on Saturday. So we'll see, man. It's going to be a fascinating thing, and I'm looking forward to covering it and looking forward to seeing what Bill Belichick can do in Chapel Hill. But, yeah, man, it'll be a fun and an interesting tenure to cover no matter how it happens. So I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones from Fenway Park in beautiful and sunny Boston, Massachusetts. We appreciate you guys
cozy Boston, Mass.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys watching. As always, make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell too, and head on over to TarIllustrated.com, just $8.33 a month to sign up. And one last thing, get in contact with us. Should have said this about 30 minutes ago, but if we're looking for sponsors actively, if you're interested in potentially partnering with us, get in touch with us. Easiest way to do it is on Twitter through our DM at Hill Illustrated. And remind me the email address, AJ. I'm blanking on it again. It's shame on me for blanking on the email.
THImedia@yahoo.com.
THImedia@yahoo.com. And again, if you guys partner with us, it would love to promote your business on our YouTube channel. Just went over 18,000 subscribers. Big thank you to everybody who's subscribed, and on our website as well. Traffic's been booming, especially over the last couple months with everything going on. So not only do you get that, but AJ, throw you a little insider information on there too. It's what happens when you join the THI.
Let's get to 20,000 subscribers by the ACC tournament.
I think it's doable. I think we're at 18,100 now, over that mark. We just hit 18,000 about a week ago. So I think it's doable. We need guys who's watching to hit that subscribe button right now. Take a couple seconds to do that. But I think it's doable. We'll see if we can hit that mark. That'd be a fantastic milestone to hit. And again, we can't do it without everybody watching. So we greatly, greatly appreciate it. But yeah, guys, appreciate y'all watching as always. And we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.